What's up, YouTube? Excalibur here, and oh my Gogmazios, these are insane. You think that artisan weapons are already dominating this game? Yeah, forget about regular weapons unless you're using true Shadowbringer or the Omega Plantis' weapon for Sword and Shield. Yeah, forget about those. About regular weapons. And it's Gogmazios' artisan weapons, and they are on steroids crack. But before we get to that, I will go over Gogmazios' armor and Gogmazios' weapon, because those two are really complicated, but at the same time understandable. And the only problem is RNG in order to get that roll. Well, so without further ado, let's go. So for Gogmazios, we got the peak performance elemental absorption with one 3-slot and one 1-slot. We also got the one 3-slot and one 2-slot. And for the chest, one 2-slot, one 1-slot, one 2-slot. Two 1-slots, and then one of each of 3-slot, 2-slot, and a 1-slot. But however, the fun fact is, even if you change it to beta in alpha, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's just gonna end up the same. So you might be confused and be like, "Hold on, I thought my armor would change, give me more slots or something." But here's the real kicker of the differences. The difference is the set bonus, where the helmet has the Shoshia Pulse, and the beta one has Guarding Art Veil's Vitality, the Decimator. While the beta has Scorch for the chest, and Zuwu's Protein Friend, and the arms have got Gogmazios' Forgor Anjanat's Will with Second Wind, and then the beta has Blangonga's Warcry Spirit. The beta for the ways, which probably nobody will care unless you're using Misasune weapon, is Bubbly Dance for the waist on the beta, and Ebony Adogoron's power. The last one is the legs, which is still Shakama's Might on the alpha set, and then Gravios' protection on the last legs. This is one of the most complicated armors in the game, in a unique way. Hey, I would say, in my opinion. Well, in my opinion, pretty much. But the way you used it is actually pretty simple, to be honest. You use one of the armor. I would recommend one armor piece for each, even though, yes, Gogmazios' trait is that increased elemental attack when large monsters become enraged. It is called Mutated Hostile. Level 1 effect increase, and you gain temporarily damage barrier. Barrier reactivates after cooldown. This is good for multiple builds, aka the opposite of Agitator for increased elemental attacks. Such as good for dual blades, for example. And long swords. Hoods. But either way, there's multiple. It may be the most complicated armor in the game, but it's understandable at the same time. And the reason why is that thanks to the update to Transcendence to make even rarity level 6 and under exceptionally good, it will also give them an extra decoration slot, making them more viable. You might say, how do you can forge a Gogmazios armor? Can you get it from regular weapons? No, you can't. It's through artisan weapons. For example, it requires you to have a rarity 8 as usual. It's kind of easy. Just make an artisan weapon, build it up if what you wanted it to build, and then make it into Gogmazios' weapons. And once you forge it into a rarity 8, remember only rarity 8 can make it into the Gog weapons. And once you upgrade it to the Gog weapons, well, first off, you need to tear off Gogmazios' parts in order to get the parts for the upgrade. You have one, because one, you'll have increased attack at the price of losing affinity, or you'll have boost affinity at the price of losing raw and elemental, or you have elemental, which increases elemental damage, but loses some affinity. Personally, I always go for raw attack for great swords if I'm using just regular elements. But however, since I'm using blast, I am using blast, and probably auto mentions of using sleep. It's kind of necessary to use elemental focus of sleep status effects to affect the monster even longer, or even paralyze longsword to even boost the paralysis chance. Now, if status triggers seems to return, this is crazy. It will make it even more of a monster. Now, as you can tell, yes, this is Gogmazios reform set. Now, I do have one with Mizune, Prowess, and Lord Soul. That's a one build you can mention with a boost element, and you can actually go for Gogmazios reform and actually keep the bonus like you previously had on your RTM weapon, and then you can have a random roll where it can have boost attack EX, affinity EX, and elemental EX, sharpness boost, and a sharpness boost plus 50. If done right with this weapon, you will basically never ever have to run a single razor sharp. Because the problem with longswords these days is that razor sharp is too good to pass. But with enough sharpness boost, well, you pretty much don't have to worry about razor sharp at all. Well, in my opinion, that is if you want. But as for great swords, since the sharpness is so good, there's no need to use razor sharp as anything particular. The sharpness gauge is pretty long enough. Probably the only thing that is needed, like more of handicraft, is my other dragon long sword. But other than that, the blast weapons and everything, it is utterly insane. With this. But then again, if you're going for status, I would highly recommend element boost, because it will boost the chance of inflicting status element to the monster, and have a higher chance of putting someone to sleep or putting monsters in paralysis state. Makes it plenty of room for stuff like foray, which you gain affinity and attack bonus if you afflicted them with poison or paralysis. Now the problem is with active skill such as Gogmazios Tyranny is that it is completely RNG to get to hoping that you get what you want. And remember, I said that sometimes it's not the monster's group skill; it is the group skill itself. It's that the problem is most of the group skill that I've experienced are either trash or actually good. It tends to be neither both. So either way, if you want to go for Gogmazios Tyranny, if you want to like go for resuscitate and stuff and Gogmazios Tyranny, that's what I recommend. However, if you're not going for something like if you want to focus on other monsters that you caught interest in your eye, go for go for Guts and Tenacity, Lord Soul. However, if you're using a hunting horn, for example, you would go for hunting Maestro, Lord's Instant, aka Maestro, for hunting horns only. Now keep this in mind. When you're using Transcendence, it will make some of your rarity 6 armor and under have more slots than you can ever have before. So let's just say, for example, my basic build, known as the Guardian Doshaka helm and Doshagama brace, it gives me the ability to have Powerhouse, which temporarily boosts attack upon getting offset attack or perfect guards, Power Clash. Yes, but with this update, we can make these 2 armors to have a 2-3 slots and a 1-1 slot. And our option of choice to having up here is to have Raydow's Thunderous Raydow and Thunderous Raydow. This will boost the duration of our latent power. We'll put one more on Agitator to make it have 20 affinity, which on Monster on Rage with maximum might gives us an absurd 50 affinity. And combine that with latent power, which grants level 4 latent power, it will give us approximate 40 plus affinity. Especially when you're proccing with Guts. Especially when you have Guts Tenacity already built in with this. And thanks to Guts Tenacity, it obviously doesn't matter what you choose on either like Guardian Protection. If you managed to get Guardian Protection on the longsword or a great sword or any weapons that you used, you go right ahead. You get Wards of Rivalry, in which is basically not that grand and outside of the one map. So yeah, that's one example that you can think of. And a last but not least showcase, for example, is that if you're really lucky on your plate, your goal and objective is to have Lord Soul and Gogmazios Tyranny on both of these weapons. And what we'll do once you have Gogmazios Tyranny and Lord Soul, well, Lord's Fury, basically. I'm sorry. Lord's Fury on one of these will activate. You will have access to the most ultimate builds in Monster Hunter Wilds. And especially when you have access to the regular Doshagama's armor, this will transcend Doshagama's armor into having a few more level 2 slots. And this one will opt to be in a level 3 slots. We'll still maintain our latent power, for example, and have access to the most monstrous one. Now, if you got the right talisman, which is basically you get focus +2 and maximum might +2, it makes this build even better, which means less cost, which means it makes plenty of room for others to make sure it makes room for plenty of other slots to make a play. Especially when you're combining it with New Udra. Now, to make Lord's Fury work, you need to have New Udra's helm and Uduna's Wild Embrace. The reason why for Uduna's Wild Embrace is to trigger have Quick Sheath, and not just that, have Lord's Fury, which is Resuscitate, which means you're going to be inflicted with Frenzy. You're going to be inflicted with Frenzy first off, and then your Resuscitate will active. If you manage to get the God roll for both Longswords and Greatsword, that both have Gogmazios Tyranny and and Lord's forgive me, Lord's Fury on both of those weapons, then you never have to worry about, oh, if I switch to this weapon in of my longsword, then I'm kind of worried I'll lose Lord's Fury. Yeah, Fury, which obviously creates plenty of room for stuff like powerhouse. You basically only need one Gormagal legs, which is why I chose the legs most of the time. But but other than that, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it. And then the other two can achieve it. It can achieve Lord's Fury, and now which leads to the final thing into the door. Alarm Pelt is dog water, so don't worry. So I wouldn't recommend it, but the Shakuma's latent power sets is also fantastic too. And sometimes you do take damage by doing offset attacks or perfect guards. Of course, this will become 3 slot, which makes it room for stuff like adrenaline rush, and and stuff like reassessment, in order to make this build even more a monster. Well, the emote says it all. I am happy more than ever, and I'm gladly I can play Monster Hunter Wilds more than ever before. Now that this Gogmazios' update is out, and I've been saying this for the longest time, and we really need an Elder Dragon to shake things up or something, because this game doesn't feel like Monster Hunter without Elder Dragon. So I'm just overall happy that Gogmazios. I know that some people are, I don't know, disappointed with the Gogmazios, but come on now, Gogmazios is incredible. Either way, I think this is one of the best updates in Monster Hunter Wilds, actually, and I really am happy that he is here. Let me guys know what you guys think in the comment section below. Well, until then, and I'm out of here. Stay epic, guys.